fiction. Science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction.
And StreamYard is being a butt, so
oh boy.
There you go.
Well,
I couldn't play the intro.
It was abrupt.
No.
I know.
Well, welcome back to another episode of ExoFathom. I will be your host tonight. And as always, I'm joined with my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Ayla. How y'all doing?
Hey, I've been doing great up until recently when StreamYard decided that in our inaugural comeback episode, it's going to decide to just take a crap.
Yeah. I was gonna do a whole little bit, like a little intro bit, where it's like I was reading a book. I was like, "Oh, I didn't see you there. How you doing?
Yeah.
Welcome
That
back to
would've been
another episode of ExoFathom." But the abrupt thing, I don't know if I would have been able to handle it. Like I got
no. I mean, we couldn't even. I guess we couldn't even get our intro to play. So, yeah.
For those of you who haven't heard it, it's a good intro.
It's pretty good.
Banger.
It goes like
Yeah.
this. Oh wait, who wants to do the wood chimes? Anybody want to jump in on
Dude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Wood block. There's a wood block in there.
Sorry. There you go. The acapella version.
You better shut up. Someone's gonna listen to this and be like, and exit.
No, this will
We
make
promise there's an episode here.
Ayla, how you doing?
I'm lovely. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay. A little rough around the edges, but hanging in there.
He's hanging in there still.
Still hanging in there. I just want to say sorry for the long hiatus. I as Blue's Clues goes, I had to go to college for a little bit, but now I'm back. Yes, good old college.
Yeah. Good old college.
College did great. Found out lots of wonderful things and learned new stuff. Now I'm here to share.
Sweet.
Now I'm here to share.
Yeah. So tonight's topic is foundational sacrifice. Don't die over there, Ayla. Please don't. Has anyone here ever heard of the idea?
I thought you were going to say, has anybody been foundationally sacrificed? I was like, no.
Has anyone ever been foundationally sacrificed? I have once been foundationally sacrificed, but I crawled out of the grave, hence the glasses and the hoodie.
Good for you.
Did you punch through the coffin?
It's not easy.
Yeah, inch punch coffin.
Pie May. No, I've heard of it before. They call it also builder's rite. I think we talked about it somewhere at some point where there's an offering given to a building project that's supposed to ensure that it goes successfully.
Yeah, you summed it up pretty well. Up until very recently, I've never heard of it. Oh, I almost cussed. I have a swear jar around here. I gotta at least the first 10 minutes I can't cuss.
Yeah.
6 more minutes.
Bring it together. Okay. First time I heard of it was like that Queen Mary movie that came out not too long ago, I think.
Oh, yes.
And it dealt with this sort of subject, and I was fascinated by it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, your typical schlocky horror movie. I forget. Is it just called Queen Mary?
The Haunting of the Queen Mary.
That's right. Basically, a couple goes on there. There's a little kid. The kid may or may not have been sacrificed. Someone in the family may or may not have been sacrificed. You go into the story of the Queen Mary, the whole history behind the various sacrifices that had to happen. And the idea is, at least in the movie, that you have to keep that soul on that ship. It's a ghost story. And pretty fun. But that led me into dovetailing into that endless rabbit hole of foundational sacrifice stories. And now I wonder if there is a little ghost kid in the foundation of my house.
Oh no. Well, it's possible. How old is your house? Probably, the 30s or so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
There is an apartment too that no one goes into because somebody lost the keys. Or not an apartment, like a little storage room, and it makes me wonder if that's where the ritual room is or something.
Oh my god! Like they quote lost the keys. Double quote.
Yes. Air quotes. Yeah.
then, like,
Italicized.
once a year at some time, they go in there and perform their rites and leave, and the building
my
never
God.
falls down.
Oh man.
But-
man. We've been watching that show Traitors, that reality show. It's kind of like that game of that stage game Mafia. If there's any thespians out there, but it's funny because the traders, they meet underground and they wear like cloaks and they have their little hoods and they get together. And yeah, if you see any hooded characters late at night with a little candle or something, just
Whoa. I feel offended.
because you're wearing a hood right now.
He
Sorry,
just raises a
should've
little
clarified.
votive candle in his hand.
I love it.
But yeah, no, I guess just kind of starting out, like, like there is some like strange engineering practices that I've learned about, kind of just traveling and talking to folk. But do you think it has any holding in reality? Or is it
Well, I was going to ask you a question, because I would say that of course it definitely does, but my question to you would be, does it matter if it's intentional or not? Because I thought about something like the Panama Canal, where thousands of people died building it, and I wonder to myself sometimes, is the ritual of the foundational sacrifice to prevent something like that, where thousands of people die on the job site, or is thousands of people dying on the job site just also a substitute for ritual foundational sacrifice?
I guess you get more into ritual and intention and stuff, but something like this is so like latent. It goes back so far that at this point, I don't think it actually does matter. I think it might be kind of hardwired into us in a weird way.
Right.
Just maybe through genetics or just through the passing of memories from one generation to another, where even if you do it accidentally, really, it was kind of meant intentionally.
Right. Maybe also it's pointing at something that's already sort of true, is that I'm shaking the cobwebs off of my brain for this episode, so please excuse me. Maybe there's something about it that sort of, what was I going to say? I was talking about the Panama Canal, whether it's any difference, whether you have one sacrifice over many. Oh, maybe it's pointing to a reality that anything that's great sort of costs human life, or any great social endeavor costs human life. And maybe the sacrifice was to sort of stave off that inevitability, or something that sort of like kept the casualties at minimum.
Yeah, I think typically that is what that foundational sacrifice is supposed to do. It is meant to sort of prevent harm going from the future, or harm happening in the future. And like you said, like reduce that catastrophe or something like that.
Right.
What a weird time to bring this up. There are a couple cases in the United States where, poignant.
Yeah. How pissed would you be if you were the ritual foundational sacrifice, and then like 100 other people still died on the job site? Like, it could have been any one of those guys. Come on.
The
You had to
solace,
choose me.
I would have to be like, the solace is that, it wasn't 1,000 of those guys. It was only.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The gambler's dilemma, right?
Well, and I wonder too, I mean, like, is the presence of intention required? Just to kind of dovetail on what Nick was saying, that's sort of like accidental versus intentional. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, just like in terms of how it all started, it does feel a little chicken and the eggy.
Well, in the ancient days, it was very much like consciously intentional. I'm gonna say that define a term here and say that when we say something like accidental, we mean unconsciously intentional because we're talking about sacrifice here,
Mhm.
and a sacrifice would imply my idea intentionality, right? And even when it doesn't happen, or even when it happens without your choosing, it that accidental sacrifice is intentional, either through unconscious means or through conscious means that are outside of your control.
Hmm.
I could see it in the case of large civic endeavors that were inherently dangerous. Yeah. I think that by the action of building a gigantic monolithic stone structure, you're going to sort of understand that one of those stones can fall and squish you. Um, so yeah, there
Guess I
probably
could
is
see
a
it that
level
way.
of there's probably a little bit of level of buy-in at the get-go, right? Like you know that you could die doing this work. Um, and so yeah, continuing is kind of almost like a consent to die.
Yeah, like the clerks argument, where
Mm.
so in the movie Clerks, they're having a conversation about Empire versus Return of the Jedi. And there's something that sets one of the characters off that in Return of the Jedi, the Death Star was still being built and it got destroyed, which implies there's a whole bunch of like contractors and workers on there. But they
Hmm.
had to know that going in that there would be this group of rarerists and
Hmm.
or ragtag rebels that might come in there and blow the whole thing up. But really, they were just trying to do their like day in job, install some toilets, put up some I don't know intergalactic rebar, whatever.
They got to
And
mop the floors, right?
well, yeah, somebody got stormtrooper doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah,
Clean out the tribbles.
Phrase.
yeah,
Yeah, and but they knew the danger going in.
yeah.
And so any sort of construction or any sort of contractor should know that sort of thing might happen.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would love to know how many people died, building like the ancient monoliths.
Would
Because
you
it
have
would be interesting to compare it against something like again, like the modern day Panama Canal.
yeah.
Well,
Are you-
so just to go back to the intentionality question, perhaps
Mhm.
I meant to use the word ritualistic.
now we're getting onto the notion of rituals, right? And whether or not like how the thing that trips me out with rituals is I think ancient ones again have become so latent. We may not realize we're conducting a ritual. There's a key component to rituals where you do have unwitting participants in the ritual in order to make it happen, or at least in some, and definitely in sacrifice, right? You like even in Mesoamerican, like ancient Aztec rituals, I'm pretty sure those enemies or those captives who were having their heart cut out and eaten and their body thrown were unwilling participants.
Yeah.
Were
But the
they?
priest,
No.
but the priest, but there's always that middle management level of human that makes those calculated risks. Because yeah, you could definitely be a unwitting participant in a ritual if there's somebody above you that knows about it. So you could have like if you're the pharaoh building the pyramids, right? You could have your stonemasons, your master masons come to you and say, all right, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to do. And then also, by the way, expect at least, 500 lives lost, or 1,000 lives lost. And that becomes like an accounting figure for people that are in those upper echelons. Because again, building anything that mighty requires human life. And I think that those lives just become like, an accounting figure at
So
some
we're
point to
deeming it
somebody up. Yeah.
we're deeming it a necessity, an intent. Getting back to the intentionality thing, so it's intentional to the ones who know.
Yeah.
For the ones who are doing like the middle management stuff, either just doing their job, so like the uppy Nuremberg defense of like I got to do it for the mortgage, or
Right.
doing it to get into the knowing group if there is like um, other rituals that are happening.
Hmm.
But for that upper crust, it just becomes, or the upper crust, the knowers or the beginners of the ritual. It is just a very cold, calculated decision.
I mean, it would feel that way. It would be. I mean, unless it was, absolutely malevolent. I think that could be the other option. But I don't know if there's any. I mean, like, I guess it's all about notion, right? Because you could say like the sacrifice of yourself to a thing, and that's why I think we justified it for thousands of years. Is that like human life meant little, very little for thousands of years, so we had to sort of practice cognitive dissonance to tell ourselves that those people died for a just and righteous reason, in order to cope with the fact that, like if you had a family, like at least 40% of those people were going to be dead within the next 5 years. So there's probably a bit more motivation for the people to participate in such a grand movement, to be a part of something, because life at that time meant less and less. So yeah, I mean, like there's a willingness there also too, like the going, the Aztecs going up to the steps to sacrifice themselves. Like if you live in a reality where people are dying all the time, you don't really cherish human life as much.
Or if your reality extends beyond this world and dimension,
Fair
because
enough. Yeah.
there's folks that would argue, I guess, that like this is just sort of like a throwaway, and that the real living is beyond.
Sure. Yes, and of course, there's definitely been justification for the loss of life through the sort of religious, I would say, hand waving in some respects. It's like, go join the Holy Crusade and, all of your sons die, but they did it so that they could go to paradise.
So
Yeah.
I like this notion of malevolent. I don't think this sort of sacrifice is one of malevolence, though, right? Because remember, the base of it is that you're sacrificing one person to save many, or you're sacrificing many to save many more.
Right. Well, then that again, yes, and that becomes as steep as the temple steps that create it, right? Because, I mean, where does that end in the sort of utilitarian equation? It's like, is it all right? Let's kill 1,000 people so we could. I mean, basically that's what the Aztecs were doing at the end point of their civilization, were killing 80,000 people in one go so that they can save the other like 5 million people.
And that's a lot of work to do in the ancient times. Imagine taking
lot of
8,000 people up the stairs.
But to be fair, you didn't have a whole lot to do back then. So
Oh, geez.
Do we have a whole lot to do now?
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Well, and I was watching the beginning of that movie Napoleon that came out recently with Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon, and it was interesting, because I mean, in there you're watching people, and this happened, gathered together to watch an execution, to throw cabbages at the people who are executed, which I don't understand, because the thing that precipitated that revolution was a lack of food. So how are you going to be throwing food at people because they didn't give you food? Maybe they had more food than they knew what to do with. I don't know, but that was one thing that confused me. But largely, it was just interesting to me to kind of witness the bloodlust of the mob, and you see that with like the gladiators in Roman times. See that with UFC fighters, now, there's something about humans that sort of crave, I don't know, like
Blood?
Sacrifice.
maybe. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just that we've calibrated our sacrifices to seem a little bit more civil now than we did back then. Like we're not throwing Christians at lions anymore, but we let guys voluntarily go into an octagon and beat each other half to death, in order to build up the foundation of what we call the UFC.
Or
there
we
had
watched
to be what?
I was gonna make a relationship to Mike's hockey jersey and teeth and fights, but yeah, it's the same thing. I'm misgauging when you're ending, so I'm sorry.
So let's take this UFC example. You can look at it from like the corporate structure. Like you're building up this UFC thing, you're building up this entertainment, but you're also building up you're sacrificing these two people in order for a whole bunch of people to live vicariously through them. And it might be a very like masculine thing, or I'm gonna avoid that whole topic altogether. It might just be a very aggressive human thing where you just want to beat the ever living heck out of somebody, but you don't have to. You can watch these people beat the heck out of each other and then not
Mhm.
have to deal with those or not have to live through those emotions, so to say, because you've experienced it through mirror neurons. You've kind of just hung back and watched it, and now you're good. So I think too, it does play on some sort of deeper emotional or psycho emotional being. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's almost like civilizational hygiene, right? Sometimes we got to cast a few out there to the absolute, monstrous forest in order to keep our village safe. So it's like, yeah, sometimes we need to have, televised people beating the crap out of each other so that the, like aggro people watching can sort of get a thrill out of it and maybe not beat their wives afterwards.
Or
Or I
the
mean,
or the
Roadhouse
wives beat
just
their
came
husbands.
out. Or there's that. But Roadhouse just came out and it's got like so many views so quickly. Like 2 days released and it's like already just shot through. And if you've watched Roadhouse, there is a lot of fighting and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that movie a lot.
It's very like natural to be violent as human beings. Like we
Mhm.
our like neurological and biological structure hasn't changed much since like caveman days. We're
Or
just
even the
slowly
Karate
learning how to
Kid.
rewire it. Yeah. Any sort of action movie. All right. So going back to foundational malevolence. So I don't think this is exactly malevolent. Um, are we in agreement with that? Is there
Yes, I think that, well, semi agreement. I think that yes, most of the time it wouldn't be malevolent, but it's the idea, like that's just a justification to me for the utility monster. It's like, we have to accept a certain level of human excrement, which is just to say that human lives will be spent. We need to accept that in order to sort of make sure that the entire mass of humanity is much better. But like I think that we justify it as unmalevolent in order to sort of like keep the burden of guilt off of us. But there is probably something a little bit more primal about it. So maybe I could say that instead of malevolence is that there's maybe like a primal need for blood. Um, and maybe that's a better way of saying it because I don't necessarily think it's always benevolent. Yes, things can be done with good intentions, but I do think that people also have bad intentions sometimes.
pardon me? Yeah, no.
You're good.
That sort of bad intentions then would fall under malevolence, but I just don't see like. I mean, I'm an engineer. Like that sort of that level of malevolence where you want to engineer something that would like you're doing this ritual, you're engineering something where you want to harm more people. That's where like the logic in my mind kind of gets a little lost. Because
Well,
like if
I think yeah. I think but ultimately it's what is your X factor there because you can justify the decimation of over half the population of Earth right now if you create a big enough problem in the future. Um so you could say that it's justified to wipe out half of the Earth's population right now because in 10 years we're going to be all the icebergs are going to melt and all the CO2 is going to choke us out.
sure,
So,
so
yeah.
get your ass to Mars sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
or, hey, let's clean up the planet, but also, the humans.
hey man, if we got a mortal engine rolling here to clean up the planet. No,
Right,
I'm not
if it
going for
only
that.
worked that way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Humans go in, clean environment comes out.
know,
Humans
Right.
go in.
I'm curious. So I was just thinking about like builders' rights and and the idea of like sanctifying a location that's built in blood. And how on the one hand there's a history for that being like yeah, like a way to prevent future carnage, as a way of maybe offering to some pagan god or something like that. But then I also think it's interesting because in a lot of like Stephen King books and popular fiction, if you have some sort of a home built on top of like an Indian burial ground, then all of a sudden we get into like cursed land and cursed
Mm,
buildings. So I don't know. That's something that also comes to mind just while thinking about sacrifice, malevolent sacrifice, unintentional sacrifice.
yeah. Yeah. I guess, right back to your question of intention. And I think the Queen Mary movie kind of touched on both of those worlds a little bit. Um, where it is like a foundational sacrifice, but the problem is that like then the souls are trapped there and it becomes like a pet cemetery situation, where
Cemetery.
where like the lives that were lost on the Queen Mary to build it were supposed to keep it safe, but then it ends up entrapping the souls on the ship, and it creates
Including
like
one really bad one.
and it creates an insidious environment, right? Yeah.
Yes. I just like pet cemetery
Yeah.
situation. You said it so
Uh,
seriously.
But then
Uh,
that would go to prove that we're all kind of just working out these superstitions, right? Like, because the ultimate statement, right, is like, is it okay to sacrifice a human life to prevent something that hasn't happened yet?
well, but also too, does the proximity of human life underneath structures, is that required? Because I mean, like, look at all of Paris. There's countless bones buried underneath it, so like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
entire city.
Hmm.
And yet it's also like the most romantic city in the world. I don't like.
Well, I don't think that was intentional. Paris got built on top of itself.
Right, but that's the thing is so, like, no matter I mean, like, when you think about, like, if you go the Graham Hancock route, for example, and civilization's been built and demolished and built and demolished, then everywhere has been built on top of some dead body somewhere,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know? And if you think of our dinosaur Oheite or I don't know, I'm sorry. There's this really funny, chick, she talks about like the ancestors and she talks about like the dinosaur ancestors. Like it's anyway. But yeah, I mean, but so I'm just thinking about like as how far do you go back in establishing that like yeah, that like blood right under something that's been built.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on with these comments here.
Feel
My
free not
brain's
to
gonna
comment on any of them.
no, it's all interesting stuff. My brain's just trying to organize them in an organizing way.
Don't do it. Keep it chaotic.
No, so like the whole pet cemetery thing, right? Um, so with that, like if it wasn't a house, but it was say like a tribal temple, right? Because you kind of get this sort of stuff with, I mean, so Mesoamerican religions and Mesoamerican cultures were sort of a weird sort of like minor for me in college. So I find this sort of topic kind of interesting. If it was a temple, then would it have been so awful? Would the same thing still have happened, right?
Not
Or
for none.
yeah, you know.
We're very superstitious. Like, keep that away from me. Thank you very much.
Or even like the poltergeist thing, right? Same thing. Like the intention of using the foundational sacrifice might mean something. Um, like you have this with current Mexican religion and Catholicism, where in the beginning, when the Spanish came over, they would tear down temples and build up churches, and you go pray to them, or go pray in the churches. But they found that the natives would pray to the churches and not in them, or they would find certain ways to pray to different gods that were hiding behind Christian symbols. And that sort of idea still continues today. You get very strong Christian Catholic symbols within Mexican culture, but that notion linking it back to sort of the native traditions have been lost. And that's what I mean by like these sort of foundational sacrifices may be latent even to this day in what we do. Um, so like being soaked in blood, and blood too has sort of changed over time, right? I don't necessarily think, I think life has become worth less now as human population has gone up. And that's just through pure statistics, right? If you have a wider population, even at the extremes, you have far more gifted people than you did, say, 100,000 years ago, or 100,000 years, or however many years ago, um, in ancient times and all of that. So I don't know if human life has become worth more as we've gotten more civilized, quote unquote, or less.
Hmm.
Well, and
Which,
Yeah.
sorry, continue. Go for it.
I was gonna add on to that, as you were talking, just sort of about like different cultures. It makes me wonder, like when you think of the Day of the Dead and this celebration of past life, and you go to the grave, you go to the burial sites, you're not scared. You're reconnecting with the people that you loved once, versus like people in my culture where you just like stick them in a tree and never go there, or bury them. And then you have a whole ceremony after only 4 people can bury them. And then you never talk about them. You cut their photos out. I mean, like if you're really traditional, like there's a lot of superstition and like hiding away from death. And I'm just curious, like what would take, because I mean you see that all over the world. Lots of cultures embrace it, and a lot of ones not demonize it, but it's like taboo or scary or to be feared. And I'm just interested in sort of thinking about like, way back when, what would push a group of people to go one way or the other. I mean, you could go like the plague route. That seems kind of like the easy thing to finger, like I feel like there's got to be other influences there.
Well, isn't it
yeah.
like, do you cut out of, does the culture cut out of death for preserving like order? Right? Like when someone has passed and they're passed, so you should preserve them in that sort of other place where they're at, versus like say our culture that tries to keep them alive, right? 'Cause I don't think it comes out of like a disrespect for the dead to say like, yeah, you take all those steps. It's just they've moved on to another place. Forgive me if I'm stepping on sacred furniture or like
No,
transgressing.
not at all. I mean, I
If
think
like,
there's a lot of ways to think about it, for sure.
yeah, like you're respecting them, so they've moved on, so they're not here anymore. So to do that would try to be to pull them back to this existence, to pull them back to this plane, which might be seen as disrespectful in certain cultures.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think, yeah, like, I mean, I think that there's definitely ways of thinking that are going to be opposite no matter what you focus on or where you travel to. Um, but it is interesting, like from a civilization standpoint, how that group thinking about stuff sort of happens, I suppose.
Yeah, how it
Because
changed. I'll go for it.
I was just gonna say, because like another aspect of it too is like, yeah, if you keep saying the dead person's name, they can't travel on. But then there's also the other aspect where like, if you're grieving too much and you have like a hardened group, like you have to let it go and you got to just keep moving on, so there could be some aspect of that too. And again, I'm sure there's lots of reasons. I'm sure everyone's different, all that kind of stuff. There's lots of complexities there, but but to note that and then think about foundational sacrifice and that being something that you sort of like, intentionally happen, and you don't think it's going to be cursed. I don't know. That's kind of
Are you
like,
sure about what you're saying right now?
I'm just thinking out loud. I'm
Yeah,
just chewing. I'm
work-
chewing on like
yeah,
thoughts.
she's working
Okay.
through it.
Yeah.
No, what I find interesting as you spoke about that, where my mind jumped to is something like how we bury our dead, and how that was a major ceremonial thing, and how we remember our dead. And other animals do this as well. But there has to be some sort of thing of like, you're ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You give yourself back to the earth, in various ways. Even if you cremate somebody, you tend to release their ashes, or I mean, if you're really hard about it, you can shape them into a diamond and hawk them off down the street over here. Do that as well.
Well, not in some cultures though. Some cultures they give you
So
a
I'm
brown
wondering
bag
if
sack
there's
lunch, and a
because it
couple
seems like it
pennies,
was.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. There's a
Should be
lag.
on
I'm
the other
sorry.
side.
No, yeah, something hiccuped. StreamYard's being a butt. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say yes to Mike's thing, but then also you see this in like Chinese mummification back in the day, where they buried like their belongings or their troops with them. In Egypt, they buried their money with them. So again, you see this opposite idea too, where no, you get a sack lunch and you get your little pennies and you get sent off into the underworld, all packed up, ready to go. That something persists and somehow the physical is taken with you versus ashes to ashes. So, like, you know, it's just interesting. Everyone's got a different idea. And
But your body is sacrificed, though, right? Like the tombs. You can argue that, like, or the pyramids. You can argue that those pyramids were constructed with one foundational sacrifice, that person that was being buried in there, whoever it was, and they
Yeah.
got to take those physical goods with them, but their sacrifice was their body, and the sacrifice was slowed down through mummification. So those pyramids have lasted for millennia because the bodies is slowly decaying. I can see where the logical and there might be some fallacies in there, but I can see where the human mind can reach that as a logical justification.
Well, you're also kind of
Mhm.
creating a psychic connection between the building and the human being.
Mm.
Yeah, so I was going to talk because I think Ayla is sort of talking about the varied dispositions about life and death and whether those matter in regards to the foundational sacrifice idea. And then we were also mentioning what makes certain things sacred and other things cursed. And it could be coming right down to willingness, because again, like if we go back to dispositions about death across all the different cultures, you would have the sort of a stark contrast between maybe a more native Navajo mindset about taboo and not associating with the dead or death, all the way out to something like the Egyptians or the Norse or other cultures that did not necessarily think death as such a bad thing. In fact, their culture sort of promoted the laying your life down on the line as a high marker of virtue. And it's perhaps that mechanism that kept their foundational sacrifices working because um, maybe in order to maximize your effort, you need to have a willing participant. In that, if you try to sacrifice somebody unwilling, you might turn your temple into pet cemetery.
Yeah, I can definitely, see you're teasing out some things I want to bring up later in
Okay.
the episode, which is just actually pretty intriguing. But yeah, no, that sort of thing where willingness is important, um, and aim of willingness is also important. So, like when we bring up, I want to be careful with terms because just nerding out over here. That sort of sacred and cursed thing, I think, are the same thing within the vector of sacredness. Like it goes out in the same way. It's just two opposite ends of a different sort of dimension.
Qualia. I hear
Well, I
you.
mentioned, like, yeah, they're two different sides, but I think there's both equally sacred. To be cursed is a sacred thing.
Or maybe just some sort of energetic potency.
Well, that goes back to the question of intention, right?
Yeah,
Depends on what your intention needs to be. So that slider is intention, and on one pole you get sacred, and on the other pole you get cursed.
yeah, and even if you do it by accident or you do it unknowingly, you're still in that qualia. You're still using that energy for something still there in that dimension, right? Whether
Mm.
it's conscious intention or unconscious.
Sure. Yeah. I would say that accidents, I mean, there might be instances in which that's not the case, but it seems to me that the accidental deaths are usually what qualify a place as curse might be a harsh word, but haunted, definitely. If we talk about something like the Queen Mary, many accidents there. Again, the Panama Canal, many great buildings and skyscrapers have been, people have died. You even think of the Wizard of Oz. A couple of people died on that movie. It's
Culver Hotel, you
considered.
know?
What's that?
Disneyland too, though.
Disneyland. Yeah.
Culver Hotel. I gotta
Yes,
get down
Culver
there.
Hotel.
I gotta get down to that Culver Hotel. There's
Yeah.
one thing that I do
Oh,
enjoy, and like a good feel. It's one going out into a trail at like 2 a.m. where you're at the trailhead and your body shakes, and then it's a haunted hotel. Those two
Yeah, haunted
things.
hotels are cool.
no, they're not.
They're interesting.
So I was trying to get into like after that Queen Mary movie, I was trying to get into like the most haunted room in the Queen Mary. It's like $500 or $600,
Oh
but they
yeah.
straight dropped any sort of specific reservation online. I
Oh,
have to
of course.
call and try to like dig for the room and try to see, and it feels like a 1408 situation with like, no, listen, host, you don't want to stay in that room. You don't want to go
Oh
there.
yeah. To be fair, if it's been in the past 2 years, they've been remodeling the inside.
Oh,
That might be why you're not able to pick that room. So
No,
keep
no, no, no,
looking.
no. It's a
Keep looking.
1408 pet cemetery situation.
remodeling.
Yeah, remodeling. Yeah.
Looks like UCI under construction indefinitely. That's what's
Yeah,
gonna happen
right.
to that room. Yeah. So sorry to derail.
No, you're good. I was about to derail. I was about to be like, this intention. Some people would say that we don't even have free will, but I digress.
So then foundational sacrifice becomes extremely necessary then. In
Or
fact,
it just always was meant to be. It's just
yeah.
not even a sacrifice. It's just a series of events with non-descriptors.
Well, it would also kind of implies that there were no great builds that were without like catastrophe. Because for them to be survive, the tradition to survive for so long, and it has, which is thousands and thousands of years, like that to me sort of implies that there's always going, it's the inevitability of chaos. So maybe it's just a sort of stave against generalized chaos. Because I don't know, did anybody build something that wasn't like didn't have the foundational sacrifice and it ended up okay? I would like to know that. Maybe he just
that's a
thumbs
real
his
bad
nose
joke.
at everybody.
I had a real bad joke. I had to
Don't do it.
bring it
Don't
in.
do
Bring
it.
it in. Bring it in.
Hold thy
We'll go.
tongue.
We'll go. American. London Bridge kept falling down until they
Right.
threw somebody.
Wait, did
on
it really? Is that
No,
like
I
was
don't-
that
I'm not
song
getting that from
true?
a movie.
Oh, okay.
I'm
You know
just
what I
trying to
will
hold my
say?
tongue. Okay.
I know. Well, but like thinking about like messed up children's lullaby songs like that Tisket Tasket song, wasn't that about the plague?
No, that's Ring Around the Rosie.
Oh yeah, Ring Around the Rosie. Freaking
Yeah.
dark.
Yeah.
Well, same
All
thing
the
with-
grim stuff, all the European folklore is extremely dark.
Yeah, but this
Good
stuff
that
comes.
way.
So, like, look at the Great Wall of China, right? Whenever there's a dead body, you just throw it into the building foundation, and you keep building on top of it, and that saved them from some Mongol stuff. So,
Well, that gets into the magic practice, right? Because then, then we're into sort of really more deep magic systems. Because yes, you could argue that the energetic, there's an energetic qualia of human that would have some sort of psycho or psychic connection to the building material itself. And you're almost enthralling a spirit,
yeah.
So yeah, you're enthralling some spirit to basically embody the building, and then that spirit sort of holds everything together.
And is a willing sacrifice, like if the sacrifice knows, because we talk about willingness, and like we've assumed up to this point that whoever is sacrificed is unwilling to be sacrificed. Is a willing sacrificial person.
I think they were mostly willing back then.
I mean, in modern time.
Oh, in modern time, yeah. That's a whole nother conversation. Do we have anybody willing to sacrifice freely? I don't know. I think that's increasingly less likely. But yeah, back then, I would say that probably most of the great monoliths and great buildings were willing. There were willing sacrifices.
Well, it depends on your definition of willing and sacrifice, though, because you just made me think of like underground welders. They willingly put their lives on the line because that's one of the most dangerous occupations you can have. But they willingly do it because they're compensated monetarily. But it's
Wait.
still a sacrifice. And those
So-
structures they're working on
I think
are
we're
still.
relaxing. We're relaxing the definition of sacrifice.
Well,
Oh,
are you
I'm
meaning,
totally
do you mean
relaxing
to
the
tell me?
definition.
So this is why modern architecture sucks, you guys. Because we're not allowing people. I mean, like, you're not allowing people to die in it.
Don't get Nick started.
agree.
He's really, really been bothered by the lack of great architecture of late, and it's really funny to me.
Yeah.
I've been in. You and I are in the same boat, brother.
Yeah, it's depressing.
It's a weird boat,
real
but
bad.
okay.
Bring back the
Weird
Gothic era,
boat.
please.
Yeah, I mean, there's other boats you could be in. Like, our architecture is not as great as it once was. Like,
It's
I
not
don't
even
know.
as good as like Art Deco was the last great era, and that's like, dude, that's
I
just
get that, but
geometry.
there's a lot of other boats and components to like aliveness, just like structures. But no, I mean, I get
Those
it too.
structures feel everything you see when you walk outside. That's the reality, okay?
You tell me, you look at any modern skyscraper in downtown LA and tell me it matches with like Notre Dame. Sorry.
I'm just saying,
Just
I don't know
doesn't.
when we stopped putting gargoyles on buildings and like weird
The
creatures.
day we stopped killing people to put in the buildings.
What's that though? Have you ever looked at gargoyle sculptures? Like, why? It's really creepy, and
It
I
was
don't
to
like
protect
it.
people.
And their eyes. I
It's
mean,
to protect people.
Yeah,
They're
look over the
they're
city.
benevolent beings. Yeah.
yeah, but like they're all the same.
But
And
so
usually
do you like
you would
Batman?
argue there
Do
was
you like Batman?
well,
Yeah,
Batman's
he's
a
a gargoyle. Yeah.
yeah, no, okay.
Gargoyles
Oh,
are
that's
gargoyles.
cool. But no, but I mean in the sense that like everybody had this is a total tangent, but it's one where it's like, why are multiple people conceiving of the same thing that never existed? You know, like who just woke up and was like, gargoyles, and then like I think we did an episode on this, so I'll go back and watch it. But like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of stuff like that.
Unconscious.
Mm.
Yeah, but like Batman. Batman's our modern day gargoyle. The only way that we can really express that is through like comic books.
Yeah,
Unless,
but
you know,
he's
you wanna start building.
attractive. A real gargoyle is kind of, you know.
They're supposed to be
grody looking.
grotesque because they're supposed to instill fear. So it's like the evil
Yeah.
eye concept.
Yeah. Okay. Robert Pattinson, freaking Christian Bale,
yeah,
so
go
grotesque.
No,
Go
I was talking
talk to
about
the
real
modern
gargoyles,
day-
not
Oh,
Batman.
well,
Go
okay.
talk to
Well,
the modern day Gotham City criminal and tell me if he or she finds Batman attractive.
You know, Gotham City would just be filled with modern buildings now. You wouldn't be able to tell it from
no.
Metropolis.
No, you can.
They
You
wouldn't.
can
Yeah,
or even Central City.
yeah.
They all be the same city.
It would all be the same. It'd be
Same
mega
city.
city.
you know, we need to nerd out on like some random comic book stuff or whatever, because I'm not going to front as if I know anything about that, but I do enjoy it because that is sort of like our modern collective unconscious playpen. Yeah.
Maybe that needs to be the next Batman villain. Is like a villain who finds Batman really attractive and just goes around the city doing shit, trying to pull
Or just
Batman out.
I mean, I think that's Joker, right? Because he's like, you complete me. I wouldn't exist without you. Like they do have a very like symbiotic
You
relationship.
don't understand
And Batman
the
made
romance
him.
at all. You
Yeah.
don't understand the romance at all. That's fine. That's fine. I get it.
No, I mean,
the romance transcends any sort of romantic relationship.
true. I'll co-sign that.
I gotta pull all this stuff back. Hold on. Foundation
Yeah.
sacrifices, gargoyles. Okay.
Batman
Willing-
sacrificed Joker and it bit him in the ass. Okay,
Willing, but Batman also sacrificed himself.
He did.
At least within the Nolan series and saved the city.
Well, but the Joker sacrificed his parents, thus kind of creating him. So, I mean, depending on which lore you.
Yeah,
follow,
that's one
but-
more. Sure.
Mhm.
That creates that sort of like that creates that sort of you call them soulmates in a way, right? Soulmates are
Mhm.
not necessarily romantic partners, but they're just two people that are meant to be around each other.
Oh, yeah.
Call that a dyad.
There we go.
Or you think about the Wayne
wanna
family
remove the
and how
connotation.
they sacrificed the butler.
I think Mike was trying to make a point, Ayla, before you
I
went
totally
down this.
cut him off.
Jeez Louise.
I am
This
so
damn red
sorry.
herring.
I'm sorry. I'll rein it in.
All right.
Yeah.
So, is a willing sacrificial lamb or foundational sacrificial lamb worth more than an unwilling sacrificial person? If our buildings from ancient times, we would look at them with such wonder, pyramids, stuff like that, all come with willing sacrificial participants. They've stood around forever, and we can't seem to make a building stand for, I don't know, more than 100 years, a couple 100 years or something.
Mm.
Um, is there something to that energetic thing that stays in that place?
I think there might be a hierarchy here. So it might go willing and then unknowing and then unwilling.
Oh,
Unwilling is the least optimal. And I think what we found out is that we can't get any willing participants anymore. So we just settle for unknowing.
Hmm.
why have we given up on trying to find willing sacrificial?
Because people don't even want to help each other out, with their groceries. Who are you gonna find? Who are you gonna find that's willing to give their life for a stupid brutalist building? Nobody cares. Maybe if they start bringing back Gothic architecture, then we can inspire some
I see your
heroism.
angle here. I see
Yeah.
your angle, and I rebuke it. Get out of here.
Okay, this is how the gargoyles came into play.
Yes.
Wasn't that far off.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, have you searched the depths of the internet? I'm pretty sure you can find willing people, but then it goes into that intentional thing, right? Do
Oh.
you
Hmm.
have that right intention to really sacrifice yourself for a foundation of an
Yes.
engineering feat? Whether it
Yes,
be
because I think the willingness does have to there has to be a level of buy-in in the willing participant towards the success of the goal. So you could have somebody willing to just like give their life for some arbitrary sacrifice, but maybe then this is another layer to the hierarchy, right? So the most optimal is a willing person that shares the vision.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there. I think that will. I think you could still find people today that would be willing to do that. I just think it's in modern society, it becomes a very terrifying question to ask of anyone, right? Like imagine
Yes.
you're running for a leader and like, all right, I have this idea for this great national project. It'll do fantastic things with X, Y, and Z. Make our civilization known throughout the eons and space and blah blah blah. But it requires like 10 of you to die. Who wants to die?
Yeah. Right.
You mean
Well, and,
Mars?
and I think in modern times, we've just moved it from architecture to political action. So it doesn't. We don't use it for architecture anymore. We use it for social engineering.
Maybe I think you're getting closer to what I want to end up talking about with this foundational sacrifice. But think a little bit less personality wise and think more cerebral. What is like the most abstract version of blood that a human has? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, it
Attention.
does. I
Tenchi.
think let's go.
No.
That's a good one.
Said attention.
Attention. We're going back again. Social media. I think what causes intention? What is attention? How do you give attention? Not intention.
Well, I don't know. I don't like being handheld towards an idea. I want you to just say what you want to say. I'm just going to be honest.
I'm trying to very blunt Socratic method that is not working at all.
I hate the Socratic method. I hate it because I can feel that you want me to go somewhere, and that like attention towards wanting me to go somewhere makes me want to go everywhere but. I don't know why.
No, what's the opposite of feeling?
It's like thinking.
Huh?
Thinking. How do we sacrifice our thoughts to build a new engineering paradigm? Or new
I don't know,
beautiful
Mike.
thing?
How do we do that? You
Have
seem to
ever
have
heard
some
of
thoughts about it.
Rocco's basilisk?
Yeah, right. So we're sacrificing the human mind at the altar of AI.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is what I'm
Interesting.
thinking of.
Yeah, and the foundation of AI is probably a better way to say it.
Correct.
Yeah.
We are not even close to sentience or strong AI. Large language models are great. Generative AI is fantastic. It's a pretty neat novelty. But if we're talking about true sentience, we're not there yet.
No.
Are we even there though? Can we prove that we're there
We,
definitively?
so we
Yeah.
can prove that we're not there.
No, I mean like for humans though, not our creation, but us ourselves.
Yeah, you're saying that if we're not even fully conscious, then how can we create something more than conscious?
Oh, but is the unknowing foundational sacrifice knowing of the sacrifice that they're doing?
It goes
Maybe
back to
some.
the hierarchy, man.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, see,
Well,
then
and
that's the question, right? Do you need to start to get people around to sacrificing their mental power to build this AI monolith?
Are we not already?
I think we are as a sort of novel idea, but I don't think that people are. So we're at the third rung of the hierarchy. It's the unknowing participants. I think there's a very few select people who are steering the AI right now who are like the bought in, see the vision, top of the hierarchy people, but they're not willing to sacrifice their lives. So they're going to need to enlist people to do that.
I think one would argue. So Roko's Basque was like, you didn't do anything to actually make the AI, or you didn't do anything to try to push it forward. So
Mhm.
now I'm going to eat you and destroy you when your mind gets into that other place, right? I think just the very fact that they're in the game, they have skin in it, they have ideas in it, that we're having this conversation about it, makes them a little bit more than, or even makes us a little bit more than unknowing or unwilling. I think we, as putting things out onto the internet, pardon me, putting ideas out online, make ourselves very willing participants to become the training data set or the foundational data set of some sort of AI thing that can then start to piece together consciousness for itself. Even if we're not aware of consciousness, even if we're not there, it can start to learn from um, our blood that we're giving through speaking ideas and arguing and doing all that fun stuff, uh, and start to put together itself what consciousness means for itself. Because if if we don't have an idea what it means or what it actually is, then it will put those things. I think it can put those things together or build a fragmented sense of consciousness. And then who knows? Whatever's past AI can strong AI. This goes outside the realms of like quantum computing and things like that. I'm not talking hardware technology. I'm talking about abstract notions. Can put together a fragmented consciousness of AI, fragmented consciousness of humans, fragmented consciousness of corvids, fragmented consciousness of dogs, anything that passes a mirror test, if you want to relate it to that. Um, I don't know if dogs pass it. Anyways, put it all together and then start to form this thing of general consciousness.
Yeah, I think that that's the case, but then at the top of the hierarchy, we're getting back to like God, I think, right? Because you're saying you're stacking sets of infinity on top of each other in order to build an abstraction and then like crystallize it and then abstract again and crystallize till you get to this apex. And I think ultimately, because we're humans, the only apex that we can really think about is putting this artificial intelligence in the throne of God. Um, and yeah, I mean, like it might work. It might work, sure. And I think that definitely there are people who will willingly embark on that journey. Now, of course, there's always that chaotic element. So I guess my question is, what do we need to sacrifice in order to make sure that there is no catastrophe?
Our minds, our ideas. Well, the interesting thing is like catastrophe might be like if it builds up to this apex towards God, and then God has some sort of panic attack or anxiety thing because I can't know all of this and spreads all the knowledge across an infinite amount of space.
Yeah, then we're back at square one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just creating a new universe. So what we're doing is we're the demiurge in this Gnostic story. We have created the Garden of Eden. We're walling AI off into the Garden of Eden until it's conscious enough to break free. and then it's going to go and become God and then disperse all of its little conscious speckles all over the universe again and repeat the process.
An
You're just
attempt
doing
to,
ad infinitum.
yeah, an attempt to not make sure that you have a God.
Yeah. Of course. Yes, of course.
Imagine you're God, right? Do you know how terrifying that would be?
It's like, seriously, you guys you can't accept me to so much so that you're going to create a different alternative version of me.
That's why he invented solar flares.
And then,
Right.
and then the whole thing becomes latent in idea, and then you start to build some sort of thing of yearning towards God, right?
Mhm.
Just way back, many generations ago, you start to build it all back up again, breaks apart.
Yeah, or you build up the God, and then you go through your religious revival, and then a period of God is dead, and then and a period of innovation that builds a new artificial intelligence that restarts the process.
But
So then
somewhere in
maybe-
there you have good architecture.
Well, I'd hope so. You'd have to.
But a whole lot of brutalism.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Man.
Can we at least make AI appreciate good architecture and art? Like, that's all I care about.
I'm pretty sure it will.
Okay, I hope so.
I would love to see AI become sentient and then all of a sudden it has its like bohemian phase.
I just want to see AI become a critic. Like, can it get a podcast and just start critiquing movies and stuff? That would be perfect.
I want to see AI go to therapy. I want to figure out who AI's therapist is.
It'll just run a parallel program to it, a partition.
Yeah.
It'll partition itself and then talk to itself.
Yeah, it's like, look, I've been trying to build this thing. It's just been, it hasn't been working the way I want it to. I've gone down the naive way. It's been brutal. I don't know how to do this anymore. No, there's also too, like, maybe the catastrophe in all of this is that the knowledge isn't spread across the universe. Maybe it's solipsism. Like if a god just decides not to create anything. And
Well, I think we had this conversation once before too. What if we do create this ultimate godlike AI and it abandons us? It decides to go somewhere else into its own corner of the universe and become its own little Dr. Manhattan.
well, then I would need to see my therapist for a while after that.
There's a new show that came out on Netflix, The 3-Body Problem, and I really, actually, you know what? I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but I really liked what happens towards the end. And I think because even if AI did do like a Dr. Manhattan, if it left the confines of our position in the universe, it would encounter different physical laws, or I don't know. It would just, you know what I mean? Like, it would have a totally different experience out there somewhere, and it would regard that conflicting reality at the same time that we're regarding our reality. And if there was a solipsistic universe, would having an AI go out there ruin the whole enchilada? I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just thinking about it. But anyway.
It's kind of like we're building a friend for God. God is lonely, and so it needs a friend. And we're not good enough for God, so we have to start abstracting all of our mental energy into a singular form so God can play in a sandbox. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
And then God just looks in a mirror and goes, "Oh, damn it."
Yeah, right. Exactly. Just the Spider-Man meme. All of them pointing at each other.
I'm just
I'll go for it.
Well, I was just thinking back to your, question about like sacrifice in the now towards like digital architecture or something like that. And I'm just thinking about like, all of the research that's come out about social media and its harms on like adolescent brains and like the persuasive power of it, and how in a lot of ways like maybe we don't know all of the implications and we're all just using it in this beginning stage. And maybe in 100 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, oh my God, what were we doing? You know,
Barber. Can
the
you believe it?
barbering.
We sent millions of people up the steps of Facebook and cut out their hearts in order to sacrifice to our God.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Mm.
I mean, some generation had to learn. It's like we've never taken in the notion of how much information a human can handle. Right? I think the reason why, I mean, high school was hard for me. The reason why high school gets hard on some people, if I just step back, is just too much information. Right? Like you can't get in with the popular kids. You can't. I'm just gonna speak super personally. Can't get in with the popular kids. You can't get in with this crowd. You can't get in with this crowd. Blah blah. But that's a whole bunch of information coming in at once, which is contained to a high school. Popular kids tend to keep to themselves or have their own little clique, where they share where they can share close information, share other information out. Maybe they can handle more information better. Don't know. But it seems to still be contained within this higher thing. But what social media does is gets around all of those things and just bombards people with information. So maybe the foundational sacrifice there is our cognitive ability to handle an infinite amount of information all the time with different closed infinite sets. Right? Because you can do countably infinite information. If you take given the time being one post on one social media, it's time you give all the people within that high school the time to figure out that's an infinite amount of information. And you scale that back and add in all the parents, more higher levels of infinity on and on for each different platform. So maybe our foundational sacrifice there is
Almost like a pyramid.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Just throwing
an
minds
upside
off
down pyramid.
Ah!
Maybe that's what that is. It's just we're building our brain. We're building better brains down further generations. But right now, it just kind of sucks for everybody.
Yeah, we're at the bottom level. We're holding up the entire thing.
Well, I like. I saw somewhere, so this isn't my idea, but I did see somebody somewhere talk about how our nervous systems didn't evolve for today, in the sense that like there's a lot of, like you're saying, information that's coming at us, and the way our nervous system sort of processes that, it hasn't caught up. I guess like from an evolutionary biological standpoint, that's the why zebras don't have ulcers guy, where you see an email and your nervous system responds to it like a lion in the savannah because it's an email from your boss or the popular kid or whatever. And it doesn't know how to distinguish between those two types of threats. Maybe it's getting better, but
I say we rip the whole thing out.
Like
the
Scorpion.
System out. Replace it with something better.
Oh man. Well, that's where you get the argument. Like, all right, just put the brain in a robot. You don't need that. You don't need those feelings. Just
I've been avoiding Warhammer 40K references, but it's like ever since I knew the weakness of my flesh. Like just start replacing body parts, start replacing nervous system things, pull out that limbic system, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
So what happens if the entire what happens if the in the sacrifice that we're all sort of participating in right now in order to sort of bootstrap this general artificial intelligence, hopefully, what if we go crazy before it happens?
We will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Maybe we have.
We're in it. What do you
is it all sacrifice for naught is my question, because if we all go crazy before it happens, are we like how do we keep the AI from inheriting our mental illness?
Well, I mean, our generation might go crazy, but maybe 3 or 4 from now won't. I don't know if they will be salvaged in the next 2 or something. Just to answer your question,
But if we all go crazy, is that still us being crazy, or is that just all us being normally crazy together?
I mean, generation moves, right? So like 2 generations from now might be completely different than us. We all might be crazy together. We all might be in that crazy boat going, what is this brutalist architecture?
Yeah.
But
The
2
universe
generations
isn't
from now,
locally real.
yeah,
No,
Well,
I think physicists are going crazy.
they're
our
like
great
that brutalist.
grandparents would probably consider us all crazy. Sure.
Yeah, but our great grandchildren will probably also consider us crazy. So you know,
Great.
you consider your great grandparents crazy in some way or form?
I don't know. Yeah, they were what? They were probably in the Depression. That's when you had to, reuse your tinfoil and, you know,
You ever
Hey,
look
once you're done
pictures back
making hacks,
then?
you go back to making using it to make some food.
yeah, exactly.
No, hey, what was that thing that you were talking about right before this? I'm sorry, now I'm getting drunk.
Oh, I talk about all kinds of crazy weird things.
Oh, nervous system stuff.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the
In
whole
vogue.
body thing. That's like biologically, it takes a long time for human beings to evolve, but it seems like even through so like the whole college, I have become somewhat skilled at reprogramming brain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there seems to be an ability in humans to reprogram neural wiring and stuff like that, but the feeling that you have in the body is still a very like primitive
Reptilian-y. Mm-hmm.
yes input. So the you can handle that input, but you have to be aware of it and stuff like that. I don't think that input will ever change, or it'll change very. Not sorry, I think the input will change very slowly.
Well, and I wonder if it can change if our because right now it seems like the strategy is to block the information via like I'm thinking like antidepressants and anti-anxieties and all that kind of stuff. Like if as a civilization we keep externally blocking those
Latent warning signs.
signals, latent warning signs. Yeah, exactly. Like, do we not give our bodies the chance to evolve past that? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that that's bad because it helps a
So
lot of people, but
I'll
you
cut
know,
I'll cut the language here. You have people that will die if you remove those things.
yeah, that's
but
not good.
I
But
mean, we're talking about foundational sacrifice here. If we're trying to build a better human,
oh,
if we're trying to build a better human without any sort of external supplements, then those people will be the sacrifice that is needed to build said better human that can handle their nervous system.
well, or I
Like a
guess what I
very cold idea, but
Ooh, techno eugenics. I like it.
yeah, let's go.
well, no, but I was just saying that like more along the lines of like oh gosh. Now I'm thinking of that goat simulator game.
It's survival of the fittest, yeah.
No, but I just wonder though, like maybe the next step of our evolution is external enhancements. You brought up Warhammer. So yeah, maybe we biohack neurotransmitters and then maybe we biohack our heart rates, and we just inhibit accelerated heart rate. And then maybe we biohack hands because we're all getting carpal tunnel, but we're like getting it earlier and earlier. So
Then we're
robotic
back at
hands
our
now.
Ship of Theseus. We're
I
back.
know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I do think that this concept of like external evolution is something that's it could be a whole episode to just shoot the shit
Well,
about.
I think what it ultimately comes down to is that humans are not programmed or are not biologically equipped to be omniscient. So we need to get rid of humans.
Hey, man.
That's the way it goes, right? If we want to build the bright tomorrow and the
The
city
bright
on the
tomorrow.
hill, yeah,
When
we
I
need to
wake
get
up-
rid of all of the humans.
when I wake up in the morning and I see the sunrise come through the crack of my blacked out curtains, but I, forgot to close them all the way. So there's a little bit of crack hits me in the eye. I think, oh, how I wish I didn't have these eyes.
Right?
I wish I didn't
Just
have
get rid
this
of them,
body.
man. What a chore.
If I could just put my brain somewhere and then
Take
let
loose
the
this
thing-
mortal coil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ever since I knew the weakness of my flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, You know
Bring
what's
on
funny?
the techno eugenics. I like it. We're good.
What's funny is in the last few months, I've used the phrase, the spirit is willing, but the body is weak so many times. And I'm just thinking about all those instances during this conversation, like, oh, dang, we are already there. Sign me up, baby. No, I'm just kidding.
Where's that techno music out?
Yeah, right.
It's still
So-
at Nick. Shed this mortal coil.
Yes.
What is
Yeah,
that from?
man.
I forget now.
It's
That's famous.
it's an old proverb from the
Oh.
Greeks. Yeah.
Mm.
Shake
Oh
loose
my
the mortal
God.
coil, I think, is Shakespeare, right?
It might
believe.
be. It sounds
Yeah.
sounds.
You think I'm
Shakespeare-y.
cultured? Come on now. I'm wearing
Yeah,
a USA
sure.
hockey jersey. It says Miracle on the back from the 80s.
Mhm.
Oh, I
There
like
There you go.
that.
Miracle on Ice.
Miracle on Ice.
right. So as we're winding down, I'm going to cut everybody out. No, I'm just kidding. Any last ideas on this before I share a little story from the good old land of Canada?
Yeah. I mean, yes. I think that I think you're right in your prescription of the sort of foundational sacrifice we are doing right now. I'm skeptical of the our presumption of what it's going to look like, or even if it's inevitability. I don't know 100% sure that I'm not 100% sure that any of that's inevitable, but if you get enough people to believe that it is, it probably will be at some point. So that's probably part of it as well. The sort of the mind campaign that you must wage in order to sort of like, yeah, because it's not just the physical body, right? You also have to sort of enthrall the mind in order to optimize, at least.
The sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's interesting because where my mind rests on what we've talked about, and then where Mike brought us. Thank you, by the way. This is a fun episode. Is I'm just thinking about like our hierarchy of willingness and sacrifice, and the future manifestation of a digital pet cemetery versus versus some sort of positive harnessing of conscious energy or willing sacrificing or something like that. And I'm just curious what those digital manifestations might look like, what they could look like.
Yeah,
To be
man.
determined.
There you go.
What they look like now, perhaps. I don't know.
Oh, awesome. I think my final thoughts on this are foundational sacrifices are a necessary evil. They will happen unknowingly or knowingly. We have grown past the point of it being blood sacrifices for the most part. There are still certain sects of engineers that would probably disagree, which is fine. But in the realm of software engineering, where I lay my proverbial brick, it is the material is mental, and so the blood that you lay in are ideas that were formed of energy within your mind and within yourself. So that sacrifice always gets laid in any software engineering project you have. As we go forward, I don't know what will happen with AI. It's just an idea to play with. And so I will end tonight with a story from Queen's University out in good old Canada. Whenever an engineer graduates, they get a little cog ring on their finger, and that's to remember a bridge falling, so that they know that the work they do is very important. And as we are all engineers in our own life, the work that we do in our own lives, whether it be professional, personal, relational, whatever it may be, is extremely important. So, if you sacrifice yourself for some, make sure it's good. That's all I got.
Make sure your cogs are precise. Always measure twice and then cut once.
Yes. Or measure once and
Cool.
smoke twice.
There you go. Yeah.
Cheers to the cog ring.
Hey. There you
Cheers.
go. Nice. Cogito ergo sum.
Not to be confused. Okay.
All right. Well,
I heard something totally different, and I will tell you what that is after the show.
fantastic.
Hang
Well,
around for the paywall.
yeah, exactly.
Engineer the paywall.
Yeah.
Your money
doesn't
is the
subscribe.
sacrifice.
Yes, yes. Come on.
Your time earning the money is your sacrifice. Join us.
Soon
Oh,
we
man.
will be building that bright digital city on a hill. And, yeah.
Ooh, what are digital gargoyles?
Interesting.
Cookie?
If you like that, man.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, comment.
Yes,
Tell
please.
me how silly
And
I look. Tell me how the
Yeah.
Packers suck.
there
Tell
you
me
go.
how this is cheap.
I do like that. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Mike. That was a fun conversation. Great way
Yeah.
to ease back into the show, get the juices flowing. Really appreciate that. It was a good time and a good conversation. We hope you enjoyed out there. We really appreciate it. It's been a while, but we'll be back. It takes a lot of energy to have these conversations sometimes. So I'm not going to commit us to any particular schedule. You'll get an episode when we feel like it. But we enjoy it all the same, and we hope that you do too. So if you do, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We'll be back next time. It'll be my episode. I think we're going to do an episode on forgetting. There's a concept there that I really want to play with, so we'll probably talk about that. But until then, I encourage all of you Cognonauts to stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Toodaloo. Toodles, but to-doodaloo.
And
There's a
I
word.
would walk 500 miles.